Good morning, everyone, and we are going to begin by singing together, so please rise in body and spirit. We're going to sing number 1007. The music is in the teal hymnal if you want to follow along with the notes, or you can follow along with the words on the screen. There's a river flowing in my soul. We flow together into community each week like rivers, all the tributaries of our lives coming together for this hour, coming together in this physical sanctuary, flowing in from our online sanctuary, merging into one body, moving together, always moving, nourishing ourselves and the earth. Welcome to this river that is the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Welcome into this loving community of seekers where we strive to live with integrity, nurture wonder, and inspire the actions that transform us and transform the world. I'm the Reverend Julia Hamilton. I use she, her pronouns, and I am delighted to welcome you this morning into this community, whether this is your first time or your 100th time or your uncountable numbers of times. It is good to be together this morning. And I am also delighted to welcome some special musical guests here with us this morning. The Decent Folk are playing with us, so you are in for a treat. And thank you to all of our singers who are leading us in song this morning as our music director, Matthew, takes a well-deserved Sunday off. Thank you to Heather Levin on the piano, always providing us with beautiful accompaniment. If you're visiting with us, we would love to get to know you better. There are connection cards at the welcome table outside in the coffee hour after service. There's a visitor's link online if you're joining us in our online service that will help us keep connected with you, keep you up to date on all of the things that are going on in the life of the congregation. We do have a visitor welcome on the second Sunday of every month, so if you're new and would like to know more, join us on the second Sunday of the month in the office right across the courtyard there. And if you've been attending for a while, if you are feeling like this is your home, this is your congregation, your river in which you want to spend time, please stop by our membership table. We would love to welcome you into membership whenever you are ready. We have so many things going on in the life of this congregation. There's an insert in your order of service. There's a Friday email that has all the details, but I want to highlight a few. And of course, the first I want to say is that some of you are looking particularly fabulous this morning because you have visited our fashion fling this weekend. It's always a wonderful Sunday because everybody is showing off their beautiful finds. It's still happening after the service in the lower campus. You can find some great things. Thank you to everyone who donated and helped make this really wonderful event happen this year. The ones who are running it can't hear me because they're down there right now, so make sure and tell them thank you as well. After the service this Sunday, there is going to be a very exciting community conversation about our upcoming capital campaign and the plans that are emerging and taking shape from the vision that this congregation has cast for the future. We are going to be sharing the first renderings from our architect about some of the possibilities for Lower Campus in particular and other places. We'll be hearing more about the details of the plan that it's shaping up and how we're going to be moving forward across the year. So please stick around. Join us in Parish Hall, and if you're joining us online, we will be recording this and making it available so you can also participate in this process of looking toward a more resilient future here at the Unitarian Society. At the end of the month, we're going to be having a potluck on the final Sunday of this month, so mark your calendars to join us for that. And next Sunday, we are going to be starting a new Sunday tradition here, something that other congregations have done for years and years and years, but I think maybe the first time we're going to do it here, and that is a blessing of the animals service. This is going to be a great experiment, which means that you actually get to bring your beloved creatures with you to church. Yes, there will be more instructions coming out. I know, it's very exciting. There will also be some space reserved for folks who would like to have just human companionship, so feel free to come as well, even if you don't have an animal companion. And we will be embracing some joyful chaos, a much-needed dose of fun in the world. So come to the blessing of the animal service next Sunday. I invite you now to take a breath, to settle yourself wherever you are, to find the laughter in your spirit, the quiet space of sanctuary in your soul. Allow yourself to be here in this community this bright morning as we ring our bell and let the sound connect us.
Good morning. If you're joining us in our online sanctuary and would like to participate from home, please type into the chat, "Chalice is lit," and the name of your street or town. While we cannot see the flames, we know they're burning bright throughout our far-flung community. The words for this morning's chalice lighting are by Anastasia Berosh. As we light this flame of hope, may our congregation become a kaleidoscope of souls and people. In the presence of this flame, in me, in you, in us, is an invitation to sit at the table. May we tend our soul fire through these challenging and trying times to open the hearts and minds of all who enter our doors.
Each week we take a moment to lift up something good in the world, an antidote to the stream of sometimes very difficult and challenging news and experiences that happen throughout the week. But alongside of all of that, there is always good to be found if we open our eyes and hearts to it. And so I invite you to take a moment this morning to think of something good. Think of something that brought you hope, joy, a small thing, a big thing, something concrete and real. And don't just keep it to yourself, but after the service, during our time, social hour, or online in the chat, share that good thing with one another so that we can keep rekindling that flame of hope among us. And the good thing that I want to offer up to share this morning with our congregation is one of the first signs of spring in our town and community, which are the redbud trees that start blooming. We have one in our yard, and even before the first leaf makes its appearance, tiny little red and pink blossoms start to appear. It's what inspired the color choice of my stole this morning, and it is a welcome reminder that the seasons can change, that beauty is waiting to burst into being all around us if we open our eyes and take it in. The blooming of the red buds is a good thing. Now, I am going to invite you all to take a moment to greet one another, and judging by the energy I have felt in the room this morning, just keep it short, say hello, begin a conversation with just a welcome, and then afterwards we can continue to be social during our coffee and conversation afterwards. So turn to your neighbor, welcome them, say hello, introduce yourself, and then we'll sing. I'm going to invite our singers to come forward. I'm going to invite our singers to come forward, and the rest of us, if you would like to rise in body and spirit, we're going to sing number 1018, Come and Go With Me. 1018 in the teal hymnal, or the words are on the screen. Come and go with me.
My name is Charla. I'm the Director of Religious Exploration. I use she, her pronouns, and it is time for our Time for All Ages. So if you like sitting on steps with Reverend Julia, come on up. I see Sophia back there. Hello, Sophia. I see Clark and Theo coming up. Everyone, welcome up. And while the kids are coming up, I can tell that some of you are thinking to yourselves, where did Charla get that fabulous dress and scarf? I can see it in your eyes. Well, I can tell you, I got it right over there in Jefferson Hall at the Fashion Fling. And you too can still have time to get over there. The doors are open until 1 o'clock. Who else is wearing something that they got at the Fashion Fling? Stand up, let everybody see what you're wearing. Great. Well, head on over when you have a chance. All right. I've got a story this morning. It's a true story. And I'm going to move back a little because I feel like I'm right on top of you guys and you won't be able to see me. Hi, Sophia. And it's a true story, and it takes place in Africa. And I love this story because it's about what one person can do, but it's also about what a whole community can do when they put their minds to something. So it's really a wonderful story. It's called Wangari's Trees of Peace. And I'm going to ask you to imagine the pictures in your mind, and we can take a look at them later. Wangari lives under an umbrella of green trees in the shadow of Mount Kenya in Africa. She watches the birds in the forest where she and her mother go to gather firewood for cooking. And she helps harvest the sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize from the rich soil. Wangari shines in school, and when she grows tall, like the trees in the forest, she wins a scholarship to study in America. 6 years later, her studies over, Wangari returns to her Kenya home and sees a change. What has happened, she wonders. Where are the trees? Wangari sees women bent from hauling firewood miles and miles from home. She sees barren land where no crops grow. And where are the birds? Thousands of trees have been cut down to make room for buildings, but no one planted new trees in their place. Will all of Kenya become a desert, she wonders, as her tears fall. Wangari thinks about the barren land. I can begin to replace some of the lost trees here in my own backyard, one tree at a time. She starts by planting 9 seedlings. I don't know how big they were, but seedlings, so not very big. Watching the seedlings take root gives Wangari the idea to plant more, to start a farm for baby trees, a nursery. In an open space, she plants row after row of the tiny trees. Next, Wangari convinces the village women that planting trees is a good thing. She gives each one a seedling. Our lives will be better when we have trees again. You'll see. We are planting the seeds of hope. The women spread out over their village, planting tiny trees in long rows, like a green belt stretching over the land. The government men laugh. Women can't do this, they say. It takes trained foresters to plant trees. The women ignore the laughter and keep planting. Wangari pays them a small amount for each seedling still living after 3 months, their first earnings ever. So all the women get to earn some money planting trees too. Word travels like wind rustling through the leaves about the green returning to Wangari's village. Soon other women in other villages and towns and cities in Kenya are planting long rows of seedlings too. But the cutting continues. Wangari stands as tall as an oak to protect the old trees still remaining. We need a park more than we need an office tower, she says. The government men disagree. Wangari blocks their way, so they hit her with clubs. They call her a troublemaker and put her in jail. And still, she stands tall. Right is right, even if you're alone. But Wangari is not alone. Talk of the trees spreads all over Africa like ripples in Lake Victoria. More women hear the talk and plant even more seedlings in longer and longer rows, and the seedlings take root and they grow tall until there are over 30 million trees where there were none. Remember, I said this is a true story. 30 million trees. The umbrella of green in Kenya returns. Women walk tall, their backs straight, for now they can gather firewood closer to home. The land is no longer barren. Sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize grow again in the rich red earth. The whole world hears of Wangari's trees and of her army of women who planted them. And if you were to climb to the very top of Mount Kenya today, you would see the millions of trees growing below you and the green Wangari brought back to Africa. And I want to share just a little bit about her. Wangari Maathai was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004 because of her contribution to world peace through the Greenbelt movement. In African tradition, a tree is a symbol of peace. So it was fitting that when notified of winning the award, one of Wangari's first acts was to plant a tree, a Nandi flame tree, at the base of Mount Kenya. And this is what she said in her acceptance speech. We are called to assist the earth to heal her wounds, and in the process, heal our own. Indeed, to embrace the whole creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder. And now, we'll sing our kids out to our class.
We I invite us now into a time of reflection, meditation, and prayer. I invite you to settle yourself wherever you are, once again getting in touch with your body in space, in this community of others. Feel the way the earth supports you, the gravity gently holding you here in place. Last Thursday night, I watched the lunar eclipse from the Rose Garden, not far from here, where the astronomy club of the Santa Barbara City College had set up their telescopes. My friend snapped a picture through one of them, and I think we have it up there. This eclipse was a total one when the earth lines up directly between the sun and the moon and casts its shadow across the moon. But it's not total darkness in the shadow of the earth. Instead, the moon turns this beautiful shade of pinkish rusty red. And what we are seeing in that color is actually the light from all of the sunrises and sunsets that are happening on earth at that moment. The sunrises and sunsets reflected back to us from the surface of the moon. That red shade is because that is the only color that crosses across the earth and bends around to bounce back to our eyes. It was quite a meditative experience. This next Thursday night is the spring equinox, that moment of balance between day and night when both are exactly the same. Like sunrise and sunset, equinox is this tipping point, this moment when change happens. Of course, change is happening all the time, but these celestial moments invite us to take notice, to pay attention to the possibility of growing light. So I invite you in this moment of quiet reflection to attend to that sense of balance in yourself, that sense of tipping toward the light, that possibility of longed for change. To remind us that all things move in cycles and that we can find places of equilibrium even in shadow. Let us take a time of quiet reflection together.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Gwendolyn, and I'm joined this morning by Gary Jensen and Robert Winokur. And we're going to share a song with you this morning in honor of the coming of spring from Scotland. And I would love it if you would all sing the chorus with us. So the song is Wild Mountain Thyme, and it's time as in the plant, not as in the clock. I think Spellcheck got a hand on the title in the order of service this morning. So just wanted to clarify that. Would you give me an E, please, Robert? Mm-hmm. That's my E. And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme. Try that with me. And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go? You already know it. Sing the whole thing with me. And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go? All right, and here we go from the top. The summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Here we go. And we'll all go together pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? I will build my love a bower by yon pure crystal fountain, and around it I will pile all the flowers o'er the mountain. Will you go, lassie, go? Join me. And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? I will range through the wilds and the deep glens so dreary, and return with the spoils to the bower, oh my dearie. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? If my true love shall not come, I will surely find another to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Let me hear you. And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Will you go? Will you go, lassie, go? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
That is a very, very hard act to follow, but we'll try. It's a pretty good bet that most, if not all of us, have at one time or another heard or even asked the question, what's in a name? Whether harking back to high school English classes or using the phrase to dismiss something as too insignificant for further discussion, it's become shorthand for who really cares? Well, our USSB community learned that there can be tremendous significance in a name, more than simply a convenient way to identify or label a person, a place, or a thing, or perhaps even a building. That song, I have to step back for a minute. That was my favorite song when I was a senior in high school. So I'm trying not to relive my past in front of you. Okay, so let me start again. More than simply a convenient way to identify a label or label a person, place, or thing, how we select a name, whether for a child, a pet, a building, or even something like a window, can communicate a great deal about interests, values, and aesthetics. Not long ago, our congregation experienced the significance and challenge of naming when we collectively tackled the thorny issue of what it meant for our progressive community to lift up Thomas Jefferson with two significant markers: a window prominently displayed in the sanctuary and a frequently used room in another part of the campus. In public forums, we discussed Jefferson's positive qualities and contributions, and then measured these against the troubling reality of his history as an enslaver who benefited materially and personally from holding other human beings in bondage. If you attended those meetings, you no doubt recall that these were not easy discussions. Emotions ran high, and there were thoughtful arguments presented on all sides of the issue. While we might not have reached complete consensus, something that rarely, if ever, happens in a democratic process, we did reach a decision. There will be a new window installed in the sanctuary, replacing Jefferson with our Unitarian forebearer, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, a woman whose life, work, and values more closely reflects the high ideals to which we aspire. We took a collective deep breath once the decision was made, and although in our diverse group, it's probably quite safe to assume that not everyone was 100% satisfied with either the change or with the process by which we made that change, our community remained united in support of the decision. After our struggles with the Jefferson window, it's understandable that some might be wary of embarking on this process once again. However, the Capitol campaign has presented us with the opportunity and challenge of thinking about how and why we attach names to spaces that are central to our mission and definition as a progressive faith community. While Jefferson is slated to disappear from the sanctuary window closest to the pulpit, we still have a room that carries his name. Our campus is also home to physical spaces with names that are descriptive but generic. Parish hall and kitchen come to mind, or reference people many of us cannot readily identify. To me, a prime example of this is Blake. Now, I won't embarrass all of us by asking for a show of hands, but I wonder how many of us actually know who this Blake was and why we have a building and a room named after him. Big hint, it's a hymn. As much as I enjoyed his poetry, for years I was puzzled by the fact that UU had named a building after William Blake. We are very poetic, but I could not figure it out. At a recent board meeting, I was gently informed that I was thinking of the wrong Blake. The building is named after Reverend Berkeley Blake, the minister of the Unitarian Society from 1933 to 1958. Thank you, Judy Ferris, for setting me straight on this. Despite all the potential complications and challenges inherent in the naming or renaming process, the positive side is that it presents an exciting opportunity for us to think critically about how we relate to our physical environment and the messages we want to convey to our own congregation and to the larger community. And I'd like to invite Nate Rich up to the podium to share his thoughts, both as a member of the congregation as well as a member of the board, on the significance and responsibility of names and naming.
Ellen is also a difficult act to follow. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So says Claire Danes in the 1996 box office hit Romeo and Juliet. So says the character of Juliet in the play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. I was in high school in 1996, so I had friends who preferred to watch the movie rather than read the play. When I started thinking about this reflection that Ellen and I offered to share together, I had the vague recollection that that idiom, what's in a name, wasn't just an idiom but came from somewhere, and I couldn't remember where. And that's what led me to William Shakespeare. And sure enough, this line, what's in a name, that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet, is actually part of the most famous monologue in that play and in all of Shakespeare, with the possible exception of Hamlet's to be or not to be. And in that scene, Juliet is on the balcony, and she says, stop me if you've heard this one before, "O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name." Remember, Romeo and Juliet is a story both of romance and family feud, with our star-crossed lovers from two families who are bitterly at odds with one another and therefore stand in the way of their romance. Important context. "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy," she goes on to say. "Thou art thyself, though not a Montague." What's Montague? Now here's the money quote in full, talking about Romeo's name. "It is nor hand nor foot, nor arm nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for that name, which is no part of thee, take all myself." Claire Danes delivered that better for sure. Now, to be sure, the real issue in this context is probably not so much Romeo's name as the family who gives it to him, but what Shakespeare puts into the mouth of Juliet here is a very clear articulation of what is called nominalism, the idea that there is no intrinsic connection whatsoever between the essence of a thing and the name that we give to it. And believe it or not, the philosophy of nominalism has been very important both intellectually and culturally. It might be at least partly responsible for the Protestant Reformation and the Scientific Revolution, two minor episodes in the history of the world, right? Now, it might seem easy to say, like Juliet does, that you'd love a person all the same if they were named something else, because what you love is the person and not the name. And it's probably easy to see that an apple tastes the way it tastes, whether you call it apple or manzana or anything else. But when you have the responsibility of giving something or someone a name, is it really that easy? When that's the case, does it really feel as if a name is just incidental, accidental to the thing and not essential to it, to use the language of Aristotle? For the first 3 or 4 days of their lives in Cottage Hospital, both of my sons were named Baby Boy Rich. That was what the sign on the door said. And if you could put that on a Social Security card, we might have left the hospital that way, because in both cases, even days after they were born, we still had no idea what to name them. And when you have a 3 or 4 day old baby without a name, you know you're in trouble, because it isn't as if you had no time beforehand to think of a name. In the Abrahamic tradition of negative theology, or what's called apophatic theology, the God in whose image we are created is nameless and therefore infinitely nameable. But try putting that on a birth certificate. Unlike the God of negative theology, humans need names. Our names, in effect, call us into existence as persons. Now let me tell you, as profound as that theology is to consider, if you don't handle pressure very well, I don't recommend considering it when trying to decide what to name your children. But here's the thing, it's true. There's a very real sense in which we become our names. Plenty of people told me before my first son was born that if you haven't already decided what to name your newborn, then as soon as you see them for the first time, you'll know that they look just like this or that name that you batted around. That was not my experience. Before we named Luca Luca, he didn't look to me like a Luca at all, or any other name for that matter. That was the problem. But after we finally named him, he became Luca. And now he looks exactly like a Luca to me. Say or write the name Luca, even spell it differently, and the image that comes flooding into my mind is the image of my Luca. Every part of him. Say the name, and for me, you've invoked him. In fact, this is reminiscent of religious traditions in which the names of God or the gods almost literally embody the power of whatever quality they nominally signify. When a devout Muslim, for example, prayerfully utters the name Ar-Rahim, the merciful, they aren't simply calling God by one of his 99 names. They're invoking the mercy of God itself as if the name somehow mysteriously embodies it. Now, thankfully, we aren't tasked here with naming any babies, and we're certainly not tasked, not at the Unitarian Society, with naming any gods. Our task, eventually, is to name a building, and perhaps a room or hall. But names aren't just accidents, and what I want to offer for your reflection is the suggestion that what we have to decide as a congregation is not what that building should be named, but what we want that building to be. In naming it, the question to consider is not what we want to call it, but what it is that we want to call into existence in its place. Whatever we name it, that's what it'll become. What is in a name? Maybe Juliet's right, and it's nothing. But maybe it's everything. No pressure.
This is the beginning of a conversation that will be continued. Every month here at the Unitarian Society, we give away a portion of our offering to support a project or a program that helps us live our values in the world. And this month is a very special offering because this month is when we partner with our kids and youth in the religious education program to figure out what their values are and what do they want to support in the world. We raise funds as a congregation, and then we turn those funds over to our kids and youth to decide where they want to give their support. And then Easter morning, as part of our traditional Easter egg hunt, they vote with their eggs that they find in little baskets for the 3 different organizations or projects that they want to contribute these funds towards. So the funds that you contribute to this help us work together as a multi-generational community to instill our values of generosity and compassion into the next generation. So please give as generously as you are able to support this project and all the works of this community. And read with me the affirmation of gratitude and giving that is on the screen or in the order of service. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
All right, we are back with a song this morning for you in Irish Gaelic called Oro Sé de Vahawalia. And this song has been used over 300 years in everything from weddings to rebellions, and now just a dramatic offertory that's about to happen. So, yeah, thanks so much. Oro Shedava Hawalia, Oro Shedava Hawalia, Oro Shedava Hawalia, Anisha Yaktantari, Shedava Avan Balen Wadabeagrach, Tuvein Yevin Dagu Havra Shelev Merliak. Is to Jiltalesh Nagalin, Horo Shedava Hawalia, Horo Shedava Hawalia, Horo Shedava Hawalia, Anisha Yaktantari, Tegranya Wilek Chaktar Salya, Ogliam Hale Magara, Waliad Hennis Nigal Naspani. Iskafishir Ruagagalim, Oro Shedava Hawalia, Oro Shedava Hawalia, Oro Shedava Hawalia, Anisha Yaktantari. Wheelerina vartka vecka manna mam jo en jag sjakten gran jo vill agus mila giskak ek foga tvanega lev horo shedava walya horo shedava walya horo shedava walya Anishayak Dantari Horo Shedava Walya Horo Shedava Walya Horo Shedava Walya Anishayak Dantari. Thank you.
Thank you, decent folk, for being with us this morning. And thank you, Nate and Ellen. And you're going to be seeing some of the first renderings of this space that which we are considering a new name for at the town hall. So this is one of the ways to start sparking that creative thinking around what this space might become. So every now and then, you hear a sermon that sticks with you. I've known a lot of ministers, and I've heard a lot of sermons over my time, and many of them excellent, many of them good, many less than memorable. But I want to tell you about one that was transformative for me. It was sometime in 2008. I was in my last year of seminary, and I'd become part of this study group that had formed very close bonds over our time in graduate school together. And one of us was getting ordained at her home congregation in Germantown, Maryland. And she had done something a bit unusual. Instead of asking one of the esteemed senior colleagues, senior ministers of the area, she asked one of her fellow seminarians to preach the sermon at her ordination, one of the other members of our clergy group. And so we all piled into a rental car, and we made the 7-hour drive from Boston down to Maryland to celebrate the first of us to become a fellowshipped Unitarian Universalist minister. And my colleague preached this sermon that was all about what it meant to be starting out in ministry in a time of the impending climate crisis. He minced no words about what he saw coming down the road. Al Gore's film An Inconvenient Truth had been released in 2006, and by 2008, we had all seen that hockey stick curve of global emissions that were heating up the planet. But his sermon wasn't so much about the practical things we could do to respond. There were other places we could go to get the details of carbon capture or how to lobby elected officials, how to show up at public protests like so many of you have done about the Sable pipeline here in our community. His sermon was more about what it would mean to be a leader in a spiritual community that was charged with fostering the hope and resilience we would need to see us through whatever the future might hold. He talked about the role that Unitarian Universalist congregations would have in providing a refuge for people during times of crisis, in being communities that were dedicated to a sustainable future, places where people would find care and compassion for their grief and anger and fear. He talked about the power of such communities and what a gift they are to the world, and that we, as ministers and co-leaders, collaborators in this moment, had a responsibility to nurture and strengthen this faith, these communities, as best as we can, because the world needs us. It was a powerful charge, not just to my friend who was being ordained, but to every single person who was there that day. And it has informed my own sense of what it means to be a minister in our faith tradition ever since. The stakes, he said, are high. The challenges can seem overwhelming. But our congregations are resilient. and powerful when we rise to what we are capable of being. Now, since I heard that sermon 17 years ago, that word resilient has become very popular. And although it is often used in this ecological sense, resilience and sustainability, most often it's used in a much more sort of personal, individual way. A lot of therapy, for example, is focused on fostering resilience, or school districts talk about and fostering resilience in kids. Or your doctor might talk about resilience as the capacity to bounce back after an injury. There are hundreds of books and articles and self-help workshops you can go to that focus on this idea of how to help people become more resilient. The American Psychological Association defines resilience this way: resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. I'm struck by how much this definition focuses on that individual work of adapting to difficult experiences. And it does not include the possibility that resilience might also mean not just adapting, but building the capacity to seek the root of those circumstances and make change there. Some things we can adapt to, perhaps, and some things we should work on so we wouldn't have to keep adapting to them. Too often we define resilience as how many times you can take a hit and keep getting up. And we put the responsibility all on the individual to cultivate personal strength, to roll with the punches, to bounce back, to recover from trauma. But how do we cultivate a resilience that allows both the individual to recover as well as create the systemic changes that we need to hold us all? How do we see resilience as more than just an individual project, but rather embedded in the way we construct our communities and our society? This ethic of community resilience, that it's not just up to you to figure out how to survive and thrive on your own. It's a project we do together. And then I came across the work of Judith Herman in her book Trauma and Recovery. And rather than looking at resilience through this process of an individual lens of hurt and healing, she sees that individuals can only recover when they're in a system that helps support their recovery. And she begins to explore the role of power. She says, at the moment of trauma, the victim is rendered helpless by overwhelming force. When that force is that of nature, we speak of disasters. When the force is that of other human beings, we speak of atrocities. Traumatic events overwhelm the ordinary systems of care that give people a sense of control, connection, and meaning. Trauma, she says, is caused by feeling powerless. Recovering from trauma, being resilient, means reclaiming that sense of power, reclaiming that sense of connection and control and meaning. Resilience is about reclaiming power. And then it all started to fall into place, because what are we talking about here in our plans for this building, for this campus, but very literally reclaiming power, putting in solar panels and batteries and systems that will keep the lights on in disaster, that will help our community recover from trauma. Last year, when we went through this visioning process for what the congregation wanted for our future, the word resilience came up all the time. You said that you envision being a resilient community, a place that is of service in times of crisis, that models our care for the environment, that sustains the physical and spiritual well-being of the community. So we started talking about increasing our capacity. And at first it was very concrete, right? Adding more solar panels, making our systems more efficient, being able to use our campus as an emergency shelter should we need it. And we called this becoming a resilience hub. This is an idea that we didn't invent, by the way. Cities all over the nation are looking at these networked community spaces called resiliency hubs. And Santa Barbara is just beginning to explore this, and we can be a part of it. And we are literally talking about power. About electricity, yes, what happens when the power goes out, and how do we restore access to power when that happens? And it is strikingly similar to how Herman describes the process of personal resilience after trauma, being able to recover from powerlessness. So if we define resilience as not just the ability to adapt to challenging times, but also as the ability to reclaim and restore power and agency after a crisis, then this conversation we're having about environmental resilience and personal resilience and community resilience, it all comes together. We want to be a resilience hub, restoring power to the building, to the people, to the community. So if we're talking about resilience as this ability to reclaim power, then it prompts me to ask, what makes you feel powerful? What makes a community powerful? And how do we figure out how to use that power for the collective good? These are the kinds of questions we are going to need to be asking ourselves as we explore the idea of resilience as one of the key goals of this congregation. We need to talk not just about HVAC systems and solar cells, but what it means to create spaces and places where people feel empowered. Now, it can be hard sometimes, our relationship with that word power. So many of us are here in a Unitarian Universalist congregation because we explicitly rejected the power dynamics of other more hierarchical religions. We're very suspicious sometimes of people in power, to say nothing of traditional concepts of an almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing deity. We view power sometimes like a hot stove, something we are warned never to touch, even as we rely on it every day to cook our meals. So maybe this idea of becoming a resilience hub can help us shift our relationship to this concept of power. Help us understand that we have an ability, and I would say even a calling, to generate and restore power. Not just electricity and solar panels, but agency, purpose, and connection. Power that heals us, power that transforms us, and it is not just for our own use, not just to be hoarded, but shared with everyone who needs it. Because power at its most basic, most elemental level is simply the ability to affect change in the world. When we turn on a light bulb, we are using power to make a change, right? To turn on the light. When I move my arms, I am using power, energy to activate my muscles, the electrical impulses in my brain moving to the electrical impulses in my muscle cells. We might feel powerless, but as long as that energy runs within us, our power can never be taken from us. And we can gather it and store it and use it when needed. We can become a community, people-powered battery, not just a solar battery to keep the lights on. This resilience hub invites us to think intentionally about working with that kind of power. We can position ourselves to be a place where people come to restore, to renew, to reconnect, to rebuild, to move out of a feeling of powerlessness and being alone and back into feeling connected and alive and capable. This is what it means for us to be resilient, to embrace the capacity of our congregation to do this work. And if we can create and share this kind of power, then we will truly be ready for anything. Because as my friend and colleague said, the stakes are high. The challenges can seem overwhelming. But our congregation can be a resilient and powerful place of transformative care when we rise to meet the moment. I am so excited to be doing this work with you. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Please rise in body and spirit and let us sing together one more time. We're going to be singing We Are Building a New Way, still in the Teal hymnal number 1017. So please stay right where you are. And if you want to put your hands over your heart or hold hands with someone next to you if you have permission, or hold them open, however it is that you get connected to that feeling of aliveness and connection that runs through us, that power that runs through this community and each and every one of us. And as you go out into this beautiful and heartbreaking world, may the light of love shine upon you, out from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And let us call out a blessing.